Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to talk about this. This is the Glide Gear DEV 1000 camera slider. And the purpose of a slider, as you may or may not know, is to allow your camera to slide back and forth along this tiny rail that resembles a miniature dolly track. And what I like to use sliders for are to add that extra touch of class to wide shots. If you've ever seen TV or movies where there's a wide shot and there's just a little teensy bit of camera movement that gives it that little bit of class, that's what you can do with this slider or sliders like it. Now, one thing I noticed about this slider right away is the build quality. This thing is really well made. It's made out of all aluminum, it looks like. You have the aluminum track right here. The carriage is all aluminum, and you have these aluminum legs on both sides. The only thing that's really plastic are these rubber feet. On the bottom, you have a plastic knob back here, and then the bearings are plastic themselves. Feature-wise, it's got some pretty good features, I think. Now, granted, the main feature is that it slides your camera back and forth along this rail smoothly. And I like the fact that the metal is coated with some kind of anodized coating, which makes it really slick, which allows the plastic bearings to slide back and forth nicely. That's nice. These feet on the side here are actually detachable. They come detached, but if you're never going to use this on a tabletop, you don't have to put these on. You can remove them. Now, one thing the feet are used for, the legs I should say, is to keep the carriage on the track, because if there is not a stop on either side, this carriage will slide right off the rails. So if you don't want the feet, you can always use the bolts that were provided and put them in on top instead of the bottom, and they will keep the carriage from sliding off if you don't want them. Let's talk about the length here. This is 23 inches, and I think it's kind of the perfect length for a mini slider because it's not so long that you need two tripods to support it. You can actually support it via the 1/4-20 mount here in the middle of the rail or the track. You can put your quick plate on there and it'll attach right to your tripod. As you can see here, I've got it on my tripod head, and it goes back and forth. And because the length is so short, there's little chance, I think, of it flexing on either end, especially for smaller cameras, which this is clearly made for. It's not made for a big, huge camera like a Red or an Alexa, but a smaller camera like my Sony. I also like the fact that it's short enough to put it in a tote or some kind of a storage container if you use that to transport your gear with, like I do. That's nice. It's not so humongously large that it needs its own case or a large cargo space. If it was a 3 or 4 foot slider, you don't need that because of the length, but it is long enough to where you can get those detectable camera motions, so that is good. There is a friction control on the carriage itself, so if it is sliding too freely, you want to slow it down, you can tighten this knob and it will constrict the plastic bearings on top of the rail, and then it will cause the carriage to move slowly. Of course, eventually you can lock it down also this way, but if you need that friction control, that is available. There's also a bubble level on the top of the carriage here, so you can see if you're level. Now, I was able to take this slider out and give it a whirl, see how well it worked, and it didn't take me long to get some pretty decent shots, I think. One thing about this slider, or any slider, you have to keep in mind is that it's not a motorized slider, meaning it's not going to do the work for you. You actually have to operate this. You have to put your hand on the carriage, and then if you have a fluid head like I do, you can pan or tilt while you're moving. But it's going to take a few tries to get the shot you want, but that's okay. Practice makes perfect, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that's pretty common for any equipment like this. It's just going to take the operator some time to get to know it and to get the best performance out of it. I didn't have any trouble after a few tries getting some decent shots, and neither will you if you just put some effort into it. But again, it's not right out of the box, bam, instant great shooting. You have to practice and get to know the equipment a little bit. The carriage does tend to tilt here a bit. If you're using a big lens or what have you, and it's front heavy, it will pull the carriage up a little bit. And all that really means is you have to hold it down with your hand to guide it, but it's not locked down to the slider at all friction settings. So it could move back and forth a little bit, and you just have to keep your hand on the slider while you're sliding, which is completely normal, and you probably should do that anyway. So I don't really know if that's a negative or not, but I did notice that. So all in all, I think this is a pretty good deal for $89. Again, on Amazon, check the link below. If you need a slider and you want one that looks professional and acts professional and just takes a little bit of practice to master it, I think the Glide Gear DEV 1000 is a pretty good deal. Now, if you like this review or would like to see others like it, please come to thefrugalfilmmaker.com for more, and I thank you for watching. Happy sliding!